Hi everybody, and welcome back to Plastic Models by a Regular Dude. Today we're going to begin the first installment of the construction of the US 2.5 ton 6x6 cargo truck by Tamiya, kit number 35218, for the Plastic Models for Beginners Back to Basics build. So let us dive right in. As I fumble about with the instructions and start with step one. Okay, for the build portion of the series here, I'll be using my usual suspects. I'm going to be using pretty much exclusively Tamiya extra thin cement. I may, depending on some of the applications, be using Model Master liquid cement by Testers. Got the handy dandy Tamiya, nice fine sharp pointed tweezers, and my Tamiya cutter. Now for rough stuff, I may use my Zuron heavy duty cutter here, but I use this for rougher stuff and cutting off larger chunks. So the first parts we need are B34, B5, and B20. And I'm just going to demonstrate here normally what I do. Normally what I do is I cut it away from the part. And you know, if you've seen my videos before, this is going to be a lot of review, but this is maybe for I want to treat it, like I said, as a back to basics deal. So new viewers, if they jumped in with this kit first, they would be perfectly fine and know exactly what to do. Then B5, and then B20, which is the whole chassis here, or some people say chassis, which is kind of weird. Alright, so we got that part cut out. So what I do once I cut these out, the first thing I do is I take my, let me pull my instructions down so I have a little bit more contrast going on here. I use my sprue cutter to cut as close as I can, and that's where a sprue cutter like this is a little more handy than something like this. So as you saw here, I cut that one pretty close. Now this one here, I'm gonna laugh, this one cuts just as well. Yeah, that cut pretty stinking nice. So that just goes to show that you can make do with what you have. But I do find that these really super fine blades do help with some things. See, that cuts it pretty nice and flat. Now on this part here, you can see that there is a parting line from the molds along the edges here. So I'm gonna have to remove that because, you know, that will be kind of visible underneath the vehicle. So what I'm going to use for that, generally what I do is I like to use my X-Acto knife, and any knife will do. Some people like to use actual, like, more medical type scalpels. Those are great, and the only reason I don't have one is because I haven't been able to find the type of handle that I want yet. There's a specific one and I just haven't ordered it, but you know, these are available everywhere and they really do the job. But what I like to do, especially in a case like this, is using the blade, and make sure you have a nice new blade whenever you start a kit, because they will wear out. Even though you're just cutting plastic, they wear out. Now what I like to do is scrape on it like this till I get down to the rest of the surface of the plastic. Now hopefully you can see here, there's kind of a dull area and a shiny area. The shiny area is the part that hasn't been touched by the blade yet. So you can see that even though this looks really good as far as molding, there are slight imperfections and slightly lower right there. And on something like this, it's not that big a deal because you're not really going to notice it. But that's a good way to help you get down to the level of the plastic where you know that seam is gone, that parting line. What I like to do is if there's raised detail, get up against that raised detail and scrape away from it. Now sometimes you have to be careful you don't scrape away too much material depending on what is going to be cemented onto the part or not. So as you can see, I got that all nice and smooth. Any burrs like this right here, I can just scrape it away with the edge of my blade like that. Okay, so that's all there is to it. If you find you have a little weirdness going on that detail right there, just scrape it off like that. So that's how I'm going to do it all the way around. So instead of making you watch me do the whole thing, I'm going to go ahead and get all that cleaned up and then come back with the next parts. Okay, I got the chassis all cleaned up, and there is alternative ways to do this, and that is via sanding, filing, whatever. To sand something like that, I would use, you know, a soft sanding stick or just a piece of sandpaper or something, and you can, you know, sand it down. It just, to me, it seems a little quicker to do it with a blade because it takes off more material, and because of the flat edge of the blade, it keeps the and if you keep it, you know, flush to the surface that you're scraping, you know, it won't deform the part. And one other thing I forgot to note is you don't want to have it straight up and down or facing this way to do it. You want to have your blade facing at an angle like this as you're scraping. You don't want to do that, you'll gouge it up. If you do it like this, you risk gouging it up. So just keep it at an angle. So the next part that I need to clean up is part B5. Same thing. This is where the small cutter comes in handy. Cuts it really flush. Not much in the way of cleanup. Now, when I do have to sand stuff, I really prefer these. I use these for almost all the sanding that I do, especially on armor or vehicle type kits, as opposed to aircraft. You know, aircraft, I need something a little more flexible for some of the curves and stuff, but I just like these. They're small, they fit well, they're inexpensive to buy, and I mean, you can even make them, but because of their small size, they work really well, and you can, you know, put them along the edge of your finger to use as a guide to keep you from flying all over the place. Okay, so that part's cleaned up, and then this part here is the next one that needs to be cleaned up. Same thing, cut it as flush as possible. As flush as possible. Now, it's not so prevalent on newer kits. I mean, I'm talking really newer kits within the last, say, 10 years. But some kits, especially, you know, especially kits from the 70s, 80s, into the 90s, sometimes because of the molding process, you'll get an edge, like, you know, obviously this part was inside of one mold and then this rested up against something, another part of the mold. I don't know how to explain it all, but what you'll get is on one edge, you'll have a really sharp edge, sometimes even flared out. Like if you were looking down like this, it would be flared out if you were to look at it really close under, like, say, a magnifying glass or something. And I find that sometimes it's helpful to just do the same thing with your blade or even with a sander. Run it along the edge like this to knock that really sharp edge off, unless, you know, the part is supposed to have a really sharp edge. That kind of keeps it from being a highlight whenever you weather with a kit, because when you're weathering, some of the weathering techniques tend to highlight raised portions of a part. So if you've got that lip going around, whenever you are weathering it, it can really highlight that, and it's just it doesn't look as accurate or realistic. Okay, so that's all it takes. So it knocked that off. I don't know if you can see it, but you can see on this side here, it's like really super sharp and almost raised. You can see in the reflection, it's almost raised along that edge. On the other side here, where I knocked it down, it's not like that. So it looks more like a piece of metal. So that's just something to think about. And, you know, that's something else that can be knocked down with the sander as well. But again, you know, I'm partial to using the knives for stuff like that. And sometimes you might have to knock down the sprue gate there, the attachment point where the sprue attaches to the part. You may have to knock that down a little bit so you get a nice smooth surface to knock that edge off. Again, that's just something I do, and I'm not even necessarily sure that it's needed for everything. It's just something that I like to do that I think helps a little bit, like I said, especially for the weathering, because some of that kind of stuff can really show up during the weathering process. And it's always nice to keep either an old toothbrush or an old paintbrush to knock all that loose slivers of plastic off there. So that's done. So what I need to do now, match up the look of the part there. And the first thing, this part here, there's a narrow side and a side with like a dovetail mortise kind of thing sticking out on that side. So this side goes here. It's right in there like that. Okay. And a lot of people just, you know, apply the cement there or there and stick it together. For stuff like this, I like to hold it together if possible, and then using Tamiya extra thin, all I gotta do is touch it on there. Capillary action sucks it right in. You'll hear me using that term a lot. I love it. It's very handy when it comes to building models. It just draws it into the whole joint. You hold it for a second, make sure it's all nice and flush. And there you go. So I'm going to let this dry for a second, and then I'm going to scrape that smooth, because that is supposed to be one continuous piece, and shouldn't have a joint right there like that. So I'm going to look ahead in the instructions and see if this is visible, and see if I need to fill that in or if it's okay to leave it like it is. So let me look and I'll show you what I find. Okay, looking ahead, this part B33 and these parts B18 and 19 seem to cover up that portion there. So here's something to consider, and this is, I really should have pointed this out, is you need to determine if you're going to do it with or without the winch. Now I want to do it with the winch, so you know that part shouldn't even be on there. Alright, and I've already cemented it in place. So how can you get that gone? Get the behind me part? You can put some cement back on the part like that, and it should, if you haven't let it sit too long, pop off like that. Now see, it's kind of a little bit, see, look at that. Now if it had sat for a really long time, it'd have been glued on there for good. So that was my mistake, and I'm glad that you people are watching this so you can see this stuff to look for. Watch for optional stuff. I want the winch, so I should have been doing this and not that. So, lesson learned. So that part we're not even using. So, all right. And sometimes, especially on more complicated instructions like some of the other manufacturers, I'll cross off stuff that I'm not doing, and I should have done that beforehand. So I apologize. Lesson learned, and a good object lesson. So let's get back to business. So what we need to put on here is part B33. And that is right here. So same thing, cut the part off. Saw that bumper cleanup. That was a good lesson, but we're not using it unless you're doing without the winch. Okay, so that is nice and cleaned up, and that's pretty flush. Let's sand it just a little bit. Get the sprue gates smoothed out. All right, so now that fits on there like that. Now the nice thing about this particular setup is it covers up that part we might have had to fill in there had we used the other one. So hold it again, hold it together. Some cement in there like that. Okay, there's another contact point here, so I'm going to run some right in there as well, just to give it a good, nice, solid connection. I like really solid connections on my parts, the best that I can get, because when you're doing weathering and stuff later on, it prevents parts from getting knocked off as easily, because some of the weathering can get a little rough. All right, so there's that. So let's move on to the winch portion, which is B24 and 29. So we'll cut those parts off. And when I'm cutting close on here, I like to do it at a slight angle right here where I want the blade to be flush on this edge. Okay, so it leaves like a little sharp point there. Then I just do it that way. That way it's not too flat and there's less plastic to have to try and clean up and less chance of a flat spot. And just sand the remaining burr down. Sometimes you need to get on the inside like that. And still a little rough. Use your fingernails and the whorls of your fingerprints, and you can feel those parts. Yeah, that's smooth now. All right, same thing on this side. If you were to just cut it straight off, you'd end up with a little flat spot, which, you know, sometimes isn't really that big a deal because you probably won't even notice it anyway. But use my blade to trim this inside part carefully. Thusly, there you have it. nice and smooth. And then just align the key that you can see inside of there with the slot on that end of the spindle. And I'm doing the same thing. I'm going to hold it together, make sure it's nice and flat, and use extra thin, touch in there, and it'll just draw the cement all the way around. Just kind of squeeze it together for a minute, make sure it's nice and flat and even, which it's not. So there we go. Roll it, looks pretty good. Alright, so I'm going to set that aside to cure up for a minute while I cut these other parts off. So I need a B18 is for B18 is for this side, so we'll find that one first. Good Lord, right here. Let's do B18 first so I don't get them mixed up. Okay. All right, so that part goes right in here. Let me check something here real quick. All right, sorry about that. Sometimes it's kind of hard to see around the camera. So this part, I'm flipping it around a little bit, but it fits right there like that. Okay, the back of this part butts up against this shoulder right here. This slight bit of a notch right here fits on the front of this piece here. So if it's just, oh my word, they're just like that. Oh man, I'm telling you, it's hard to, oh my goodness, get on there. Okay, see, it's flush right up there. Fits on the back. Man, that's a hard one to get into place. So you want to be careful with this one. If you're holding it in place, you don't get any glue all over it, or get it on your fingers and make a big fat fingerprint, which I've done before. All right, there we go. All right. Man, oh shit, but some of the smallest pieces can give you fits at times. So let's do number 19, B19. Same thing. Yeah, right there. So I got it in the front. And then in the back. And there you have it. Fitting like a champ. Okay, now the next part is B30, which is the bumper. So let's clip that off. And the same thing on this one. I'm going to scrape the edges because the that lip I was telling about, you can really see it on this one. Okay. Definitely want to buzz that down so it's not looking weird. What you want to do is you want to do it as flat to the surface as you can, so it doesn't end up being like a chamfered kind of thing, beveled, whatever you want to call it. All right, and then like that, and there you go. Looks a lot better. So we'll do this one here. And here. Now the ends aren't like that, so you don't have to mess with that. So that's kind of nice. And the nice thing is the attachment points here where the sprues were attached. Those are on the bottom of the vehicle, so you're not going to notice them as much unless you flip the vehicle over for some reason. So that's kind of cool. And then there's a couple of locators here and here. So this part here fits into that, and the locators fit right in here in this kind of cutout. Okay, so it's just like that. Okay, hold it in place. The old handy dandy liquid cement and Viola. There it is. Now, wait, you may say, you haven't put the reel in there yet. Well, I'm not going to do that until later because I want to paint this stuff up, then wrap the painted rope on there, and then put it in place. Now, if there was some kind of a bracket or something holding it, then it might be a little bit more of a problem, and you'd want to install it now or figure out a way not to. But you know, because it just drops in like that, and it's not a workable thing, so it's going to be cemented in place anyway. So I'm not going to cement it in there just yet. Okay, I'm going to wait. So I will set that aside in my small parts box here, which is nice to have. The parts that you're not using just yet, but you've already put together because of needing to attach them later. So that completes step one. All right, next up, step two is the engine. So first we'll cut off B6 and B7, which are the two halves of the engine block. cut those off. Put all of that. And then put them together. Put all of that. And line them up. There's locating pins and they fit together really well, but you'll still want to make sure that everything's lined up, because there is a little slop in those locating pins and holes that can throw stuff off a little bit. Now, at this point, you would want to determine, are you going to display the engine or not display the engine? If you're going to have one of the sides open, it would behoove you to paint this whole assembly now before it gets installed. And you'd also want to paint this part here that might be seen inside of the engine compartment. But since I'm going to have mine closed up, I'm not even going to worry about painting it, and I probably don't even need to worry. I wouldn't even really need to worry about the engine because it looks like everything that attaches to the parts that are already molded into the chassis. But you know, I still like to put the parts together. And it's always good practice to clean stuff up and, you know, install all the parts, even if you don't see it. But let's see, B1, which is the valve covers, or valve cover, since there's only one bank of cylinders there. I'm not taking quite as much care as I normally would to clean all this up, again, because it's not going to be displayed. Now, if it's going to be displayed, I would definitely paint it all up real nice and, you know, weather it up and make it look like a greasy, worn, dirty engine. But since I'm not, I'm just going to assemble it just so it's together and not worry about it. So, at this point, if you want to have one of your engine side covers open, you definitely want to follow the painting instructions here to get all the colors as close as one can to correct. B31, it's right there. Whoops, messing my instructions up. Okay, let's see, so this goes to the top. Whoops, got the engine backwards there. Okay, so this oblong pin fits in this oblong hole, so you want to make sure you get it on there correctly. A little dab of cement there. And this is also one of those things, as you can see, this part here is one color, a different color. Some people like to paint the parts before they attach them, some after. So again, that's something you need to practice with and figure out what you're most comfortable with. And sometimes you can do a combination. Sometimes it's easier to paint it off, then put it on. Sometimes it doesn't matter. It's easier just to paint it. So that takes care of that side. So now let's get on this side here. So B13, which looks like the exhaust. Is that the exhaust man? Oh, that's the exhaust manifold. Yeah, that's the intake manifold, looks like. Which is B13. Whoops. And that fits, 2 pins fit in those 2 holes there. And looks like that, whoops, that upside down. That flat surface there fits on, there we go. See, that flat surface there, this portion here fits on top of that. Like that. There and there. All right. So that is that. And then we need to put the, looks like the air cleaner, which is B26. And I'll go ahead and cut off B14, which is the fan blade and belts and pulleys. Now again, I'm not going to take as much time as I normally would cleaning this up, since it's not going to be seen anyway. Now, the nice thing about these kits, if you're into dioramas, which, you know, I don't build dioramas. I'm just a bonehead when it comes to that stuff. But I should say I don't build them yet. I'd like to build some. I just haven't done it. But stuff like this makes it, you know, it gives you a lot of options with the open, with the ability to open up and expose the engine. You could have like a diorama where, you know, the vehicle's broken down on the side of the road with a load of stuff. It's on the way to the front. They need to get it up there, and they're trying to fix the engine, you know, because something broke. You could have the side open, guys milling about, people working on the engine, that kind of thing, you know. And that's just from parts that come in the box. You know, you don't have to buy a whole lot of aftermarket stuff, you know, to necessarily make a nice little scene or vignette or whatever of whatever you're building. So that's step 2. The engine is complete. So step 3 is mounting the engine. If I quit flipping my instructions around, okay, and that just fits right down in here like that. See how it lines up with the fan belt past that cross member there. Whoops. So glue that into place. Contact point there and there. And then let's do a little bit in the front for some added strength. Okay, so the engine is now in place, and boy, that is one scrawny looking engine for a truck that big. Okay, so the next 2 parts are A5. So I need to find the A sprue, or A sprues, because there are 2 of them. There and there, and find parts A5. Should be 1 each, and there it is. There's 1 there. Another nice thing about these, less likelihood of clipping apart and have it go flying off into oblivion. Because if you're anything like me, if you clip one of those parts off into said oblivion, You may never find it again. Well, actually, you will find it, but you'll find it after the model is completed, painted, and put on the shelf. That's the way it works for me. Whoops. Sorry about the instructions there, folks. The fan is blowing because it's kind of warmish out here today. All right, so cut that off. And cut that off. Okay, and then take a look at how it mounts. You can see these two little raised portions here match this raised portion on the hook. Okay, see this raised portion right there? That fits on this raised portion right there. So, and they're flat, so you want to make sure this is nice and flat so it sits flush. So same thing, just using the edge of the blade to flatten that out. And then this part here that actually fits up on top of the bumper, I want to do likewise and make sure it's nice and flat. Okay, do it on both pieces. I really don't want to chop my thumb, so I'm going to turn it around. There we go. All right. Okay, so that's nice and clean. So what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to hold the part with the old tweezers, making sure it's on there solidly so I don't go plinging it off into oblivion. I could set it in place, but I'm not going to do that. Matter of fact, I'm going to turn it around and do it backwards. Okay. Yeah. So then I'm going to take my cement, put a little dab of cement there and there. And then line it up as closely as I can, drop it into place. Make sure it's lined up on that little raised portion there, and twist it as need be, which I don't have to in this case. Do the same thing on this side. Normally I tape the bottom of my instructions down so it doesn't blow around, but I just now turned the fan on. I wasn't thinking. Surprise, surprise. Okay, line that up, drop it into place, and yep, that looks pretty good. So make sure it's buttered up against there like that. And then once you get it into place and it's where it needs to be solid, you can take a little bit more cement if you want. Put a little tiny dab on there and that'll really weld it into place. All right, so that takes care of steps 1 through 3. The bumper, oh my goodness, the bumper, engine assembly, and putting the engine onto the chassis and the hooks. So with that, I'm going to stop on this video so it doesn't become too long. I'm going to try and keep these short enough where they are not a bore. So next time we'll come back and we'll start on step 4. So if you have any questions or comments about what's happened so far, or even any suggestions on what might make things easier, or even just how you do it, please put them in the comments below, and I'll answer your questions and remark on your comments as quickly as I can. So That's it for now. Thanks for joining me here on Plastic Models by a Regular Dude, and I will see you on the next installment of Plastic Models for Beginners. Back to basics, and I will see you all later.